Today, we're tackling something that every English learner has faced at some point: language freeze. You know that moment when you're trying to speak English with a native speaker and suddenly your mind goes completely blank? It's frustrating, it's embarrassing, and it can make you want to give up altogether. But here's the thing, it's not just you and it's not permanent. Whether you're learning English, Spanish, or Mandarin, this feeling of being stuck is something we all experience. The good news? There are proven ways to overcome it. So if you've ever felt like you're walking into a lion's den every time you try to speak with a native speaker, stick around. We're breaking down why this happens and sharing practical tips to help you build confidence and keep the conversation flowing. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fluent English Pod, where we help you train your mind to think in English and speak fluently. I'm Dave with our co-host Emma.
Hey, we're so glad you're here. Whether you're listening on your way to work, while making dinner, or just winding down for the day, thanks for spending this time with us.
Whether you were a new listener or a long-time one, we welcome you to our English podcast. Let's hear our today's topic.
A super relatable topic for anyone learning English. Have you ever been in a situation where you're trying to speak and suddenly your mind just goes blank? Like every word you've ever learned just disappears? Maybe you're ordering coffee, or someone asks you a simple question like, "How's your day going?" And silence. It's like your brain just shuts down.
Oh, I've been there, Emma. It's like your brain just hits the mute button, right? That's what we call language freeze. It happens to everyone, especially when you're talking to native speakers. I remember this one time in Madrid. I had practiced asking for directions so many times. But when I actually had to say it, I just stood there, totally blank, like a deer in headlights. It was so awkward.
Oh no, that sounds so familiar. It's like all the words just vanish from your brain, and suddenly even saying hello feels impossible. I had a moment like that on a train once. A British tourist turned to me and asked, "Hey, should we get down now?" And my brain just froze. My mouth went dry, and instead of saying anything, I just nodded. That's it. Just nodded. Just pure panic. I felt so embarrassed afterward.
Ha 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 ha. I can totally picture that. Don't worry, Emma. I think we've all had those moments. And I bet a lot of our listeners have too. But here's the good news. You don't have to keep feeling like that. By the end of this episode, you'll know why this happens and, more importantly, how to overcome it. So, Emma, why do you think talking to native speakers can feel so intimidating?
I think it's because we're scared of making mistakes. We want to sound perfect, but the pressure to get everything right can make us freeze up. It's like we're walking on a tightrope, trying not to fall. And when we do slip up, it feels like the end of the world.
Totally. There's actually a term for this. It's called performance anxiety. A study from the Journal of Language Learning found that learners who focus too much on perfection tend to feel more anxious when speaking. It's like we're our own worst critics.
That makes so much sense. It's like setting the bar so high that you're scared to even try. But here's the thing. Native speakers don't expect you to be perfect. They just want to understand you. And honestly, most of them are really supportive when they see you're trying.
That's so true. I remember this one time when I was in Italy and I completely messed up ordering pizza. I wanted a margarita, but I accidentally said something like, "Can I have a, margarita?" The waiter just laughed and said, "Sure, but we don't serve cocktails here." I turned bright red, but honestly, that little mistake helped break the ice. We ended up having a great conversation, and I even learned a few new Italian phrases that day. It was a reminder that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. It's actually part of the learning process.
Exactly. And when you're already nervous, it's easy to start overthinking everything. Your mind starts racing with thoughts like, what if I sound silly? Or, what if they don't understand me? And before you know it, you're too afraid to say anything at all. But the thing is, most people are kind and patient. They don't expect you to be perfect. They just appreciate the effort. And sometimes those little mistakes make interactions more fun and memorable.
Yeah, I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves. So how do we get past this fear and start speaking with more confidence?
First, we need to normalize it. Remind yourself that it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone does. Even native speakers slip up sometimes. Think about how often we forget words in our own language or fumble over sentences. It happens to everyone, so why should it be any different when learning a new language? Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, we should see them as stepping stones to fluency.
That's a really good point. I actually like to write down my fears before speaking in a new language. It helps me understand what's really holding me back. Sometimes I realize that my biggest fear isn't actually making mistakes, it's just feeling embarrassed. And once I see that on paper, it feels a lot easier to push through. What about you, Emma? Do you have any personal tricks for overcoming this fear?
Oh, definitely. I practice in front of a mirror. I know it might sound a little weird, but trust me, it works. It helps me get used to hearing my own voice in the language I'm learning, and it builds my confidence. Plus, when you're practicing alone, there's no pressure. No one's judging you. I even try making different facial expressions or gestures to make my speech feel more natural. It really helps.
That's actually a great idea. I've done that before when learning Italian, and it really helps with pronunciation. Sometimes I even record myself speaking so I can listen back and hear what I need to improve.
Yes, and once you're comfortable with that, the next step is to keep things simple. Don't try to say complicated sentences right away. Instead, start with a few go-to phrases that you can use in everyday situations. It makes conversations feel way less overwhelming.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some good phrases to start with?
Think about real-life situations where you'd need to speak, ordering food, asking for directions, introducing yourself, or making small talk. These are all great places to start, and having a few simple phrases in your pocket can be a lifesaver when you get stuck. For example, you can say, "Could you repeat that, please?" if you didn't catch something, or "What does that mean?" if you hear a new word. Simple questions like, "How do you say this in English?" can also be really helpful when you want to learn on the spot.
That's such a great tip. And remember, the goal isn't to be perfect, it's to communicate. The more you practice, the easier it gets. And to all our listeners, we want you to be part of this learning journey with us.
Yes, let's build a supportive community where we all help each other grow. Drop a comment below and tell us, what new words did you learn today? Sharing what you've learned can help others too. Let's make this space a place where we all improve together.
Love that idea. So don't be shy. Share your thoughts, your experiences, and your favorite new words. Let's keep learning.
And once you're ready, find someone you're comfortable talking to. It could be a language partner, a friend, or even an online group.
Where can I find those?
There are tons of language exchange apps, Facebook groups, or even local meetups. Everyone's in the same boat, so there's no pressure.
Sounds like a supportive environment.
It really is. And remember, it's all about progress, not perfection.
Speaking of progress, let's talk about some new words and phrases we've learned today.
Great idea. First up, language freeze. It's that moment when you can't think of what to say in a foreign language.
Next, performance anxiety. That's the fear of making mistakes when speaking in front of others.
Then we have normalize. It means to make something feel normal or acceptable.
And go-to phrases. These are your reliable, easy-to-use sentences for everyday situations. For an example, my go-to phrase is, "Could you repeat that, please?"
My one is, "How do you say this in English?"
Love it. And finally, safe space. It's a place or situation where you feel comfortable and free from judgment. Now, Emma, I've got a question for you. What's one way to sound more natural when speaking a new language?
I'd say shadowing. It's one of the best techniques out there. Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say right after them, almost like an echo. It helps you pick up their rhythm, tone, and pronunciation in a really natural way. It's not just about learning the words, but also about getting comfortable with the flow of the language.
That's such a great tip. A lot of people focus only on grammar and vocabulary, but if you don't get the rhythm of the language right, you can still sound unnatural.
Exactly. And the best part is, you don't even need a speaking partner to do it. You can shadow podcasts, movies, TV shows, or even YouTube videos. Just pick a speaker you like and start mimicking how they talk.
That sounds fun. Can you give an example of how to practice shadowing?
Sure. Let's say you're watching a scene from a movie in English. Here's what you can do. Listen first. Play a short sentence or phrase and pay close attention to how the speaker says it. Repeat immediately. Without pausing the video, try to repeat what they just said, copying their pronunciation, intonation, and even their pauses. Practice multiple times. If it's difficult at first, rewind and do it again until you can say it smoothly. Record yourself. Sometimes we think we're copying the speaker well, but when we listen back, we notice areas for improvement. Recording yourself can help you compare and adjust. Use subtitles. Optional. If you struggle to catch the words, turn on subtitles at first, but as you improve, try shadowing without them. Dave, I love that. It's like learning a song. You don't just memorize the lyrics, you also match the melody and rhythm.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, the more you do it, the more automatic your speaking becomes. You start to absorb the patterns of the language without even realizing it.
And that makes conversations feel so much easier. You won't have to stop and translate in your head because your brain will already be familiar with the natural way sentences are structured.
Yes. It also boosts your confidence. When you hear yourself speaking with a good accent and natural flow, you start to believe, hey, I can actually do this.
That's awesome. And what if someone is in a real conversation and doesn't catch what the other person said?
Just ask. Don't be afraid to say things like, could you repeat that, please? Or, what does that mean? People appreciate it when you show interest and a willingness to learn. Plus, asking questions keeps the conversation going instead of shutting down when you don't understand.
That's so important. And listeners, we want to hear from you. Have you ever tried shadowing before? Or do you have another technique that helps you sound more natural in English?
Yes. Drop a comment below and share your experiences. And while you're at it, let us know. What's one new word or phrase you learned today? The more we share, the more we grow together.
Now it's time for our most awaited session, Fun with Words segment.
Yay! This is the part of the show where we challenge you to a little word game. Here's how it works. We'll give you a sentence with a missing word, and you have to guess the right word to fill in the blank.
That's right. And don't worry, we'll give you a little hint if you need it. Are you ready? Here's your first one. One great way to sound more natural when speaking English is by blank, native speakers and repeating what they say.
Oh, this one is tricky. Here's a hint. It starts with S, and it's the technique we talked about earlier.
Pause for a bit and think about the answer for the blank and check whether it's correct. If you guessed shadowing, then give yourself a round of applause. Shadowing helps you practice pronunciation and rhythm by repeating after a native speaker.
All right, one last one for you. If you don't understand something in a conversation, don't be shy. Just say, blank, you repeat that, please.
This one's easy. The missing word is a common way to ask someone politely to say something again. It starts with C.
And the answer is could. If you got it right, great job. And if not, no worries. You just learned something new.
We'd love to see your answers in the comments. And if you learned a new word today, share it with us. Let's keep building our English learning community together.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Fluent English Pod. We hope you had as much fun as we did. Remember, learning a new language is a journey, and every mistake, every challenge, and every little victory brings you one step closer to fluency.
Absolutely. Keep practicing, keep shadowing, and most importantly, keep speaking. The more you use English, the more natural it will feel.
And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, what's one new word or phrase you learned today? Let's help each other grow.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new one. And if you found it helpful, share it with a friend who's also learning English.
We'll be back next time with more tips, more fun, and more ways to boost your confidence in English. Until then.